Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. And the floor is yours, guys. I do not know who is starting, but please feel free.
Amazing. Welcome in, everyone. Is everyone here? Do you want us to wait an extra minute or so, or should we crack on, Trish? I said
You can
crack on
crack on.
already.
I'll let,
First sentence.
it was your first sentence. He's
I
got it
know.
on. No, you go ahead. I am going to record this. I recorded the last one. That will go out on YouTube. This one we'll see what we're going to do with it, but I think parts of it at least will be available. And so I think you can go ahead, Jack. And good job using the English.
I know. I've started
English
it
slang
already.
right off the top.
My bad. Hello, everyone. My name's Jack, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleague Ryan. I'm sure we met most of you last time, so thank you so much for coming back. Today's just our follow-up session, which is more of a business focused and more of a deep dive into some of the themes that we went over last time. If you haven't already dropped your Depop shop username, if you have one in the comments, in the chat, excuse me, and where you're calling in from, I really enjoyed doing that last time, so please do. But we will just quickly reintroduce ourselves just in case you weren't here or have forgotten. Ryan, would you like to go ahead?
Sure, yeah. Hi again, everybody. So nice to see a lot of familiar faces here, and super excited to have a smaller group and answer all the questions. If we haven't met yet, if you're new, you missed the last one. My name is Ryan. I'm a seller growth manager at Depop. Um, and what I do is I work with a lot of different sellers on how to grow their business. I work cross-functionally with our product team to really build out the tools, programming, content to help our sellers the most. For some context on me, I'm a longtime seller as well and a verified Depop top seller, which is actually how I found my way to work here at Depop, which is literally a dream to be able to be a seller and work here. So always working my best to make sure I'm bringing the seller perspective and advocating for all sellers like us to make sure that we have the best offering out there. To you, Jack.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Jack. I am a seller growth executive here at Depop, and my main responsibilities kind of mirror what Ryan was saying as well. But I also look at managing the top seller program, which we received a lot of questions on after our previous session. So we have a section on that. Don't worry, we'll answer any top seller questions we have. But my main responsibility is bringing seller perspective to Depop and relaying seller information into our product and really how we can influence different areas of the business into the feedback that you guys give. So now that we are reintroduced and reacquainted, let's go ahead and crack on with what today's session's about.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're going to spend some time going over just a quick refresher if you weren't in the next set in the last session. And then these are some of the big outcomes that we really want for everybody to feel confident with going forward. So first, with inventory planning, feeling confident about what to post and what resources are available, how to adapt your pricing, listing consistency, and lastly, if there's any tweaking that would be helpful for optimizing your sales as much as possible, we'll recommend those there. I will say we're going to keep some of the info just in the slides fairly high level, since a lot of the recommendations are really on a case for case basis. So we'll spend time after really deep diving, and Trish is going to moderate an awesome Q&A session, so we can go even more in depth. Perfect. So quick refresher. Awesome. So this is just a little bit about what we stand for. I won't go into a ton of detail here, but main focus is sustainable fashion, pre-loved fashion, and accessories. What that means is that those two categories are really our focus. I know there were some questions about, other categories. That isn't to say in the future we won't expand, but I would say fashion and accessories are really our key bread and butter and focus at the moment. So definitely list all of those types of items over. And for any new folks here, wanted to just share out some really exciting stats about Depop. So if you didn't know, Depop is the fastest growing resale marketplace in the US. We actually have over 43 million registered users, and that is growing. Now is a absolutely fantastic time to join in that growth. There's a ton of potential to succeed, and we're really excited to have you all as part of that. I know in the last call, we actually had a question about Depop as, a channel. And I wanted to just touch on that. And there are a bunch of questions too that Trish sent over. We do have a growing group of high volume sellers and pro sellers like yourself that sell solely on Depop or as Depop on one of their primary sales channel. And somebody asked, how much do sellers make? Do sellers sell solely like full time on Depop? The answer is definitely yes. We have a great group of 6 and 7 figure sellers. So definitely want you all to see this as an awesome new platform to tap into growth for. And now this slide is just a quick overview of how search really works on Depop. So Depop is search first, which means there isn't a feed like different platforms, and there's not as much of a focus on following or those sorts of pieces. So focusing on search and how to optimize your listings in search is really key to make sure that each listing is the best possible to be able to surface that to the most relevant potential buyers. So what that means is choosing the right inventory, so focused on in demand and in season. And what I think for this group really means is finding the pieces to bring over first and mixing that between just adding Top as an enabled platform to list your newest inventory on as well and kind of clicking that last button. And also choosing which pieces of your current inventory that's on list perfectly to bring over. Next is listing consistency. I would say as like a target, if you our top sellers often list 150 or more, there is quite a range, but usually that's the bottom threshold. And I think as we go into, I'm seeing 6 and 7, it's both 6 and 7 figures. I'm seeing a lot of people laugh about that in the chat. But I guess another quick flag on listing consistency. Jack and I send out a really awesome newsletter every month. And you qualify for that if you list 50 or more items for 3 consecutive months. So I would recommend at least doing that so you can get some more insights from us. And lastly, listing composition and pricing and offers we'll go into and how you can kind of adapt that, wanting to keep that, high level so you can work Depop into your usual flow and make any smaller adaptation so that you can see Depop as a channel and really work that through your current process. And now, if you haven't yet, and you are primarily a seller, and maybe you'll never buy on Depop, that's completely fine. I would highly recommend liking a few items that you relate to and that maybe you would potentially buy. And that way you can really experience what the platform is good at, even if you don't have an intent on buying. This really shows, how buyers will find your items. And the more you do this by liking, saving, things like that, we will curate your suggested for you page based on all of those preferences and behaviors. And so, what that means for you as a seller is that when you actually are listing, you want to make sure your listings are simple and to the point, use applicable keywords, and don't worry, just a flag here, because I do know as someone who sells on other platforms, don't worry if you see less, likes or notifications on Depop. I know that that might be a little bit shocking at first, but I do want to explain that your listings are being dispersed much more to a more targeted group of high intent buyers. It's not as much like on other platforms where a lot of people are seeing your listings, but maybe it's not even applicable. It's not the right size. They don't like those brands, things like that. We do this in a much more targeted way, and that's really what Depop is great at. And lastly, people were asking for some inspiration. So the way that people present their shops are really different. It depends on what their style is or what type of items they have. A lot of people have a really strong, distinct background to their shops like this. I've seen many of the shops, people on this call. Just list them over. You're already doing a great job. And I would say here, there's not a lot of modeled photos. Modeled photos, flat lays, hanger photos, they're all fine. They're all good. And I would say the top performing ones are flat lay and modeled, but it completely depends on the category. For example, if the item is, something more form-fitting, then maybe putting it on a mannequin or modeling is helpful so that the buyer can see the way that it fits. Whereas for a lot of sweatshirts, for example, it doesn't really matter. The fit is going to be pretty much the same for a lot of different people. So flat lays are completely good. So no worries if you didn't want to start your modeling career. Depop does not require you to. And so these are just some great inspiration. Definitely look at our at lots of our top sellers and browse different shops for inspiration. But these are three great ones that I think are really helpful to display that you can do really well, and you don't need to start your modeling career. Don't worry. I don't necessarily want a modeling career either. Awesome. So one of the first things we're going to go into is how to adapt your pricing to Depop's no selling fee. So first, I pulled some data on List Perfectly sellers, and you could see here that there's a gap between the average selling price and then the average listing price. So listing price, by that I mean what you've published the item as costing when you first posted Depop, selling price being what it actually sells for at the end of the day. So this is first and foremost the most important rule of pricing. It's priced competitively at point of listing. And what that means is that we've done a bunch of research to show that if you price correctly, and by that I mean at the price that most buyers would want to buy it at, then that drastically increases your chance of selling. So I am going to go over just some potential reasons or misconceptions that I think a lot of sellers, really experienced sellers on other platforms, might miss a little bit when they come to Depop, and that's just due to some different pricing strategies or the way that our structures are. Awesome. So the first mistake that I tend to see is that sellers don't adapt pricing for Depop's no selling fee and then the 5% marketplace fee that buyers pay. So as you probably noticed and this is an example receipt actually from one of the sales that I made, is there is no selling fee. There is a 1 to 2% payment or 3% processing fee, 2% for UK, and then a small like per sale additional, which is written out there for payment processing fees. But there is a buyer marketplace fee. So that means that whatever the price you list means that the buyer is going to see 5% more than that when they're actually checking out. So there may be some discrepancy to keep in mind when you are listing versus what the buyer sees.
I just want to double check. So
Yeah.
the 5%, it's not like you get to the end and there's an extra 5%. They see the extra 5% since from the initial go.
Actually, it does depend on which state you're in.
Okay.
And there are different states have different rules. So sometimes they want it separated out. Sometimes it's baked completely in. So
Okay.
California versus Mississippi might be different,
Okay.
but they will see it at some point.
Okay. So we don't know how they'll see it. Basically, just depends on where they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, all the states have different ideas
No,
about how they
that's
want
fine. I just
it.
wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, great question. So here's just an example of that. So if you were to list at $100, the price in the buyer's cart, so they'll always see it in the cart, whether or not they see it when they're first scrolling with the fee included, or if they see it after as the breakdown. The price in the buyer's cart, including that fee, is actually higher. So that means if you do list at the same price as on other platforms, then you are likely charging more. So here's just a recommended approach on how I do pricing for my own shop. I kind of start with the value I need to take home. I know my margins as a seller, and then I move backwards to determine the price that I sell out. And that's a really good opportunity to actually provide even better value to a buyer, because since there's no selling fee, you can actually reduce your price more to provide a better value price while still making the same amount, if not more. So here's just an example of that. I did do some algebra. I do have an Excel sheet that does this. But if you look at that and you also are not very happy to be back in school and looking at algebra. Usually just subtracting 15, 20%, depends on which platform you usually list at. I would take that and then add the 5%. That's usually a good benchmark and much easier math to do. So feel free to do that too. That's perfectly good. So this is the way that a buyer potentially sees. This is at the bottom of each listing. Again, want to just express price competitively at the point of listing. You can send an offer or you can buy. And what we really want to do is encourage buyers to not think about it, add it to cart, and buy right away. So a lot of people asked, what are some opportunities to find that right price? So there are a lot of great ways to do this. If you want to do research specifically on Depop, you can search for similar items on the app or web, just like you would be if you were buying. You can also use the recommended pricing in the listing flow. Although you likely have all of your items already in List Perfectly and you use List Perfectly to list, what you can do is if you take a photo of your product, or download a photo and add it to Depop in the listing flow, this is within the app, then we actually do have a pricing model that'll give you different recommendations. You can see that on the bottom right, it'll give you a low point and a high point, and you can use that as a benchmark. Keep in mind, this is usually good for non-rare items. It doesn't necessarily catch as much the exact model and more rare items like that. So I would say this is a great piece to use for anything that doesn't include a specific rarity or anything like that. And then lastly, we have the sold items search, which if you do boost your entire shop, then this is a really great feature to use. I do know that many of you probably use List Perfectly's Google Lens or eBay comps. Both are really great tools as well. You don't need to change your model for Depop. You can continue to use that. My one flag there would just be take those prices and subtract that 15 to 20%, depending on which platform you're looking at, to take into account Depop's varying fee structure. And then you're golden. The second mistake that I see is baking in too much room for offers. I understand sellers come from platforms with binding offers. They hear non-binding offers and they freak out because they think they're going to get really lowball offers or nobody's going to buy. But let's talk about how I want everyone to view offers. They're a little bit different on Depop. So offers are a really great marketing lever. I want people to view it as a marketing lever. This is actually something Trish and I were talking about before this meeting. Offers are almost like indicating interest. They don't necessarily mean a sale. It means I'm interested in your product. What can you offer, or what can you do to further incentivize this specific sale? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go through. So the question here is, what can you do to convert people better and quicker? So what that means is, how can you really make your shop exude trust signals, make the seller really want to, or make the buyer really want to purchase from you and trust and choose your shop over others. The main thing I would say though is, if you don't want to have to deal with offers, if you approach your strategy for pricing as let me price competitively immediately, then that will contribute much more strongly to a sale. So as I said, I want us to view offers as a marketing lever. So what this means is, if you are seeing a lot of people add an item to bag, or they're showing interest, but they're not necessarily selling, then I would recommend setting up different automations for offers. And what this means is, you can set up an auto send for offers and also an auto respond. Auto respond is like auto negotiate. So this way, you don't have to worry as much about accepting, answering, and your speediness of responding. We do find that the quicker you respond, the more likely a sale is to go through. So setting up these automations, especially if you're seeing a lot of offers come through on a specific product, is super, super helpful. I've actually made a bunch of sales while I slept, which is literally an entrepreneur's dream, right? Because Depop went back and negotiated for me. How this works, this is the auto respond feature, is that you can set a floor. So this is the lowest offer that you'll accept. And if somebody sends an offer below this, then Depop will counter to that price. And if anybody sends a price below that, or I mean above the floor, so say you listed it at 35, your floor is 30, and somebody sent you an offer for 32, it'll accept. So it'll do that for you and in real time. So initially, before a buyer actually logs off the app, you'll be accepting their offer, which will push them to sale. And we found that that's actually contributed to a lot of our sellers making sales much more quickly. So my recommendation there, like I said, see it as a marketing lever. If you're seeing interest and nobody has immediately bought it, then start setting up these tools. So these are also really great opportunities for and marketing levers for stale inventory. So there's a lot of different definitions, I would say, for stale inventory, but let's say for the sake of this 90 plus days, this does depend on, the of type of categories that you sell and what your usual sell-through rate targets are. But let's say 90 days for the sake of this, if you're selling more mass market, everyday staples, which is really a lot of what is sold on Depop. So we do have, these are the offer automations that we just talked through. These are both enabled in app, so in the specific listing. So keep that in mind. And then we also have discounting. My personal recommendation as a seller is first do offers, and if then that doesn't work, do discounting, kind of in that process flow. Each of these actions that you send as a seller does trigger like a push notification and a message within the app. So these are really great ways to get your buyer's attention. So say if you discounted an item that a seller or that a buyer liked 80 days ago, it'll actually send them a push notification on their phone that says, this seller's actually discounted the price. And then if you look closely, you can see the X% off as a lever that you can see as a potential buyer, that strike through price, which is really appealing. And there's actually two ways to discount. You can do a permanent discount, so that will show as X% off, like in this strike through here, or you can run a 48-hour discount, which is really exciting. And a lot of times sellers will use this to mark down a lot of inventory. They'll promote on social or on their shops and really try to push people to buy in that shorter period of time. And a sense of urgency will show up. It'll have a countdown next to the discount that says this will end in a day and a half, for example. Perfect. Now I'm going to kick it off to Jack now to talk a little bit about inventory planning.
Thank you so
And I'm
much.
going to take a look at the chat too.
Yeah, just before we move on to the inventory side, one of the questions that popped up a few times is for the auto respond on offers. That's only enabled in app currently, isn't it, Ryan?
Yes, only an app, but fingers crossed we can get it in more. It is a new feature, which we're really excited about.
Yeah, so you can still bulk list on web, like Ryan said in the slides there, but auto respond for the offers you can only do on app. Hope that makes sense. Amazing. Great. Let's go through inventory planning. So you can see here there's when and what to list on Depop, which is something we touched on briefly kind of in the last session. And I really just want to deep dive a little bit more for you guys, just to see how it comparably is for your business as well. We know you're all experienced sellers here, and you probably have your own strategies and resources that you use to source. But part of mine and Ryan's job role at Depop is to make sure we're bringing you resources that are Depop made and specific to Depop that can help you not only on Depop, but as a business tool overall. We do our best to cater them for like established sellers, but also new sellers as well. So there's kind of a mixture of low lift, low level kind of resources, which you don't have to use all of, and then some more in detail ones, which I'll go through in a second. Wonderful stuff. Now, just to kind of go through again, the brands that sell best on Depop are kind of your mainstay main street brands that you see. So you can see here we've got Nike, we've got Coach, there's Levi's, all the mainstay brands that we see kind of all year round. One tip that I think we really wanted to pull out of last session is list what you already have on list perfectly on Depop. You don't need to over curate any of your listings for Depop. You don't need to go source Depop specific stock. Everything you currently have that is fashion is absolutely able and suited to being sold on Depop because we're a fashion marketplace, right? We recommend starting with what you have now and then adding kind of Depop as another platform to your current daily listing. I don't want you to go out of your way and start shifting around your whole business model for Depop. I want you to fit Depop into where you are already. That's with sourcing and kind of your listing schedule as well. And just add us on because I think everything you're focused on at the minute is super capable of being on Depop. Our main focus has always been sustainable fashion, so you'll find buyers always looking for secondhand. Find buyers always looking for lightly used, even brand new. That's absolutely fine as well. As I mentioned, kind of in the next slides that we're going to go through, I'll show you some resources that we went through a little bit last time, and just see kind of how we can give you some inspiration into curating those for Depop, but using what you've already got and not excluding them from the platform as well. Um, I saw a really quick question in the chat, which I'm going to pick up right now, which was how does kids' clothes or kids' items sell on Depop? Wonderfully is the is if that answers your question. We've done a recent huge launch into kids wear, so you are absolutely fine, and it will sell very well on Depop. Wonderful stuff. So first tool that we'll go through is the Discover page. This is on anywhere you can access Depop on web and on app, so any smart device or on the desktop. The homepage of Depop is a curated space by ourselves and the team, our merchandising team. So you can see here the homepage of Depop. I'm looking to the left because that's where my screen is. So if I'm looking away, forgive me. You can see we've got all those styles which we kind of went through last time with the Argyle Prep. We've got Velvet Lounge. But also you look below, there's the popular this week. And those are items which are selling right now on Depop. Now, I don't want you to look at those and think, oh, well, slogan t-shirts are hot right now. I've got a load of those, but it's too late because they've already sold this week. This is a mixture of anticipatory kind of listings, but also searches from actual buyers who are looking for these items. So you'll see slogan t-shirts are in searches this week. It's definitely might be time to list those slogan t-shirts again if they've been sat for a while, or if you've got a load of a certain type of item which you maybe haven't listed on Depop yet, but have listed on other platforms. They're definitely want to list on Depop as well at the same time. That being said, what people are searching on Depop is most likely as well what people are searching on a lot of platforms. So you don't have to use this information just for Depop. You can actually use it, and I'd rather you would use it as much as you want for your whole listing and an operation that you have. Just some specifics on how to get on here. You can click on the Depop logo on web and scroll down just a little bit and you'll get to the Discover page and then you'll see what's kind of trending quickly. On app, you can, in the bottom bar, there is a Discover tab, which is a little magnifying glass. That's how you get there. Otherwise, I'd say I know a lot of you use web for most of your operations, so absolutely fine to use on web, no problem at all. Wonderful stuff. I kind of touched on this last time as well. It's our merchandising playbook. Don't get distracted by the images in here. I think one thing that we picked up last time is a lot of users on here, a lot of people who joined our call weren't really using modeled images, which is absolutely fine as well. So I don't want you to look at these slides and this merchandising playbook and get put off by the fact that there are modeled images on there and that a lot of things that will be promoted are modeled images. Because as you can see on the right-hand side, we promote every kind of item as well. The one thing I really want to show you on here is the styles. So in the merchandising playbook, we have built-in styles. You can see this one's modern here, which it says it blends minimalism, functionality, and trend-driven aesthetics. But really, what I want to show you on this, and when this is updated, it shows you the styles that are trending right now. So if you have items which would maybe fit into this style, whether that's the similar style of jeans, the similar style of boots that the people in those images are wearing, they're perfect to list and then comment with those styles. So you'll see just below there's a associated details tags. These are a mixture of what buyers will be searching for to find these items, but also kind of what people are searching for on the wider internet as well and wider trends. For example, sporty elements are a big and active wear are a big part of the modern trend. So really that's what they'll be searching for. As well, we'll always put brands below. So if you think that something is a boho style, we'll give you a load of brands that you can either search for to look at sourcing, if that's something you're interested in, or if you already have those brands, you know what kind of style they fall into. If you haven't already, you can scan that QR code on screen, or I will just drop this into chat. Forgive me. That's our merchandising playbook. So everything I've just gone through there for that resource, you can click that link and go through. Wonderful stuff. So not only do we have kind of those breakdown of styles, but we also really took the time to build a calendar of those cultural moments that happen within kind of fashion and sport and things that the cultural moments which really influence buyer habits. So we put together this key retail moments to bake into your strategy around what's going on. Essentially, it'll show you when the key sourcing moments are for certain items or certain times you should list items, as well as like historical data, whether it's relevant holidays, whether they're cultural holidays or sporting events, which essentially we found influence what happens on our marketplace. For example, during playoff season and or leading up to the Super Bowl in January, I think it's in January, guys. I'm not sure. I remember it being January. We always see NFL jersey spike for the teams that kind of get into the playoffs and further, which if you've got NFL jerseys laying around or certain items which are relevant to that event, then they're always worth listing on Depop at that time because one, you'll have listed them, so they will rank higher for being a fresher listing rather than being sat there for 3 months. But also more buyers will be searching for them. So that's what we mean when we say we're putting relevant buyers in to the right places, right? We want them to find fresh items. We want them to find items that have been that are culturally relevant to the moment as well, and we always make sure that happens. Not only, I mean, the Super Bowl and things like that are a great example for those moments of like, if that team are in the Super Bowl, we should search those items. But let's think about it from a more styling perspective as well. So a huge event here in the UK is Wimbledon. For the tennis, and when every year when Wimbledon happens, there's a huge spike in not only kind of tennis uniforms, but the tennis style overall. So there's white outfits, kind of sporty underlayers. Brands like Adidas will always trend higher that than items that maybe weren't included in events like Wimbledon. Thomas, I just saw your question. Is it the month that we list or the month they're selling in? It it depends, essentially. So you'll see like the NBA finals we've got listed in May and the US Opens in May as well. But you'll also see that prom is from February all the way till May. So I'd use it as when these things are happening rather than when to be sourcing. So you can almost, if you look 2 months ahead on this calendar, you can almost prepare that way, if that makes sense. But usually the calendar like this will always be what's happening in that month. And I hope that helps as well. But if not, I'll try to get to your question towards the end. Lovely stuff. So a few more bits just based on the merchandising calendar. Oh, forgive me. We've got a few subcategories of what happens in these months as well. So not only have we got kind of the events and what you think might happen, we've also got the categories that will be selling in those months and what we think will be selling highly. So if we just pick a random month, let's go November because we're in November now. The top of November is all kinds of outerwear, which I'm sure you can anticipate for those colder areas. Hoodies, boots, knit sweaters. Obviously, we've got Thanksgiving coming up. We've got the Christmas season. Kind of, this is the time to be starting thinking about people wrapping up for people who haven't prepared for those colder months as well. These are all things that, as I say, you don't have to always look at what is happening. We will give you kind of the items that will be selling hot in those months or cold in those months as we're in November. That was a silly little joke. Lovely stuff. final kind of bits we've got, just to kind of round up what we had previously. We've got kind of all the holidays, um, and how you kind of want to plan around those as well. New Year's sales always come towards the end of the year. We've also got kind of the Black Friday, which has now been coined as Cyber Week and Cyber Monday. All sorts of cultural moments such as like back to school as well, which I think is a really strong one on Depop, for colleges and universities and schools as well. Oh, forgive me. I'm running two screens, so I keep jumping ahead too quickly. I apologize, gang. And finally, we kind of touched on it in the chat when Ryan was going through some of the pricing techniques, but listing 50 items a month for three consecutive months will earn you our exclusive newsletter. And there's a few things in the exclusive newsletter, but really relevant to what I've just gone through there is we curate a inventory report every single month. Ryan puts it together. She's an absolute star, which is essentially those subcategories that we know buyers are searching for. It's not just based on what me and Ryan think are doing well or what we are searching for. It's real data pulled based on top brands, categories, and all based on sell-through rate. So we know what's going on because it's based on data. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds to look at that because that one's a fairly relevant one right now. And if not, if you want further, then get listing on Depop essentially. 3, 2, 1.